Good morning, everybody. It's been a busy week in politics, and we are still all digesting the results of Super Tuesday's primaries. And so we are very pleased today to welcome a man who is no stranger to politics, the Honorable Dennis Kucinich, Ohio's distinguished former congressman who served in the House of Representatives from 1997 to 2013. He was also a candidate for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States in the 2004 and 2008 presidential elections. Mr. Kucinich and his wife Elizabeth, who is also here today, are from Ohio and graciously agreed to come up to Taft as guests of the Iles family. Both the Congressman and Roger Iles, Zach's father, hail from Ohio. Please, a warm Taft welcome to Congressman Dennis Kucinich.
All right, thank you very much. Hello, Taft. Good to be here with you. Good morning. It's great to join you today, and I'm here. Okay. I'm here with my wife, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, would you just kind of wave to people? And I want you to think about this now because I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes, and I'd like to go into Q&A here, and then we're going to have a session afterwards, so you can kind of start thinking about some questions that you might have. But before I begin, when it was announced that I was going to be at Taft, I was getting calls from all over the country for people saying, well, my niece or nephew's here, and would you give them a shout out? So excuse me, promise this. Amelia Allen. Aunt Jackie and Uncle Jared say hi. Aunt Jackie, by the way, happens to be my daughter, who is a TV commentator, Jackie Kucinich. You may see her every once in a while. Also, now, I don't know if I pronounced his last name right, but Logan and Garrett Guiney. Uncle Michael and Aunt Jean said hi. Okay. Now, this isn't a student, but Anna LaSala Gettler. Uncle Jim says bonjour. Zach Ailes, Donald Trump said hi. So. And Zach is actually the reason why I'm here. We spoke about a year ago, and he said, I'm going to be at Taft, and I'd love for you to come and speak here. And, of course, I started to study about Taft and what a place this is. And, this is where I want to go to school when I grow up. And Zach's family, his dad, Roger, who many of you are familiar with, Mr. Ailes and I do not necessarily agree politically. Put that disclaimer there. But what I've learned through our friendship and what I learned through my service in Congress is this, that you have to reach out and communicate with people, even if you have a difference of opinion. Matter of fact, the people you may most need to reach out to are those with whom you disagree, to kind of get an idea of what the world looks like from another point of view. And that's really one of my approaches to life. Those of you who are familiar with the poet Blake, he wrote about the unity of opposites. And there is something about all of us together have some underlying unity. And it's worth remembering. And in politics, I've always tried to pursue that. So in Congress, despite the fact that my politics were seen as somewhat liberal. In the Congress, some of my closest friends, even though we may not have voted alike, happen to be some of the most conservative Republicans. Because, again, I believe in relationship building. Now, so I want to, again, thank Zach for making it possible for me to be here and also to express my appreciation to Headmaster McMullen for his kindness in participating in this invitation. So thank you, Mr. McMullen. So when I was sitting in an auditorium like this in a Catholic school in Cleveland, Ohio, when I was in high school, I would always be asking the question, where am I going to be later on in life? And one of the things I want to talk to you about is the power of envisioning. Where you see yourself in the next few years, or in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. That has incredible power. I want to give you an example, one somewhat frivolous and the other two pretty serious. I always wanted to be a football player. And the good news is I went to a high school where there were only 24 people who went out for a team with 33 slots, okay? So that was cool. The bad news is that I wanted to, we had principally a varsity team, and I was a freshman, and I was 4'9" and weighed like 98 pounds. And the coach said they already had a mascot, they didn't need me. But I was determined to play, and I actually made the team. And because I saw myself doing that, and overcame a lot of obstacles, including being a favorite tackling dummy, and finally was able to not just play but letter as a freshman. And it was a real experience. It's hilarious, but underlying that was this feeling that I can do it, I can make it. And a few years later, I started to think about what I wanted to do with my life and in my life. And so I was in the 10th grade, and I thought, I'd like to be a member of Congress someday. Now, I had no idea how I was going to get there. My parents didn't have any money. I was born in a family. I was the oldest of 7. There was a lot of social disorganization, and we lived in 21 different places by the time I was 17, including a couple cars. During that time, life would look so disorganized and so difficult that you think, well, you're going nowhere soon, kid. But I had this dream that, maybe I could be in national politics. And I was probably about 14, 15. And I held on to that. Because the thing about life is you take a step at a time towards a journey. It's not like you have to get there in one day, but you keep those dreams. You hold fast to them. And they are they're like stars that you sail by. And so, it wasn't until a few years later on my 5th try that I actually got elected to the United States Congress. And I also thought at that time that maybe someday I'd be able to run for president, which is kind of a crazy thought. And yet, through my leadership in the Congress and challenging the wars in Iraq and a few other federal policies, I ended up with a national constituency, which put me on a path towards a presidential candidacy in 2004 and 2008. When I was 15 years old, late in my sophomore year, I was walking with my friend back from a basketball game, and we were talking about the future and, where do you see yourself? And I just had this intuition. I said, Dan, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be mayor of Cleveland. Now, no one in any big city at that age had ever been a mayor. And Dan kind of said what most friends would say at that time. Yeah, right. He said, I'm going to be John Glenn, who at that time had already been the first person in space. But the point is this. And I did get elected. I was the youngest person elected mayor of Cleveland, took office when I was 31. The point being is that I had this vision, this idea of what I could do. And for me, my life was about public service. And it was about and having a chance to express the power of envisioning. There is, the other thing I want to mention to you is that, you wonder if you can change things. And what I have found out, there's kind of a physics to change. We look at a certain reality and we just say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. But as you know from studying physics, all these, even this, it's in motion. There's, at some atomic level, this thing is in motion. And when you keep that in mind, that solids are always, there's something in motion there, that any event that appears to be unchangeable, there's something in it. There's some interstitial space where you can literally reach in and envision another reality, describe it, call it forward, and make it happen. There is a physics to change. I've been in situations where, you know, just on a community level, someone would close a playground and say you can't do anything about it, or a library and say forget it, it's closed, or try to get rid of a municipal electric system and it had already been sold by the city council, or a steel mill that had been closed. And I saw so many examples where people said, there's nothing you can do about it. And because I saw, I understood what I call the physics of change, to just reach in and describe another reality and imagine it, but you study it, of course, but then you bring forth another reality. And it is possible. You know, we can change the world. One of the things I did that when I was a member of Congress that I still work on from the outside is I put forth this idea, and I want you to think about it because this might be Taft might be the perfect incubator of this idea. I looked at the violence in the world and I said, you know, the world cannot keep being so violent without destroying all of us. I looked at the violence in our country. And there are some people who believe that violence is inevitable. I don't believe that. I think peace is inevitable. But, you know, it doesn't start out there. It starts within us. But we have the ability to be as architects of a new world. And so I thought about this idea of having a permanent structure in our government which would be dedicated to helping to communicate principles of peace throughout the society. And it's called the Department of Peace, but not to compartmentalize it as being only a governmental function. But think about this. What if our society actually began to organize and shared and taught principles of peace everywhere at the very earliest age, peace-giving and peace-sharing and mutuality, looking at the other person as an aspect of oneself, beginning to comprehend the power of human unity, which is a real thing, that we're all one, we're interconnected, we're interdependent, and being able to act on that and create structures in a society that support that. And then there are people who, you know, are racked by anger and who are disconnected from society in some ways, to find ways of reaching out to them in a systematic way. We know mental health is really at a premium in our society. We need to make it more widely available. A Department of Peace would help to create structured programs so we could deal with the issues of gang violence and gun violence, racial violence, these kind of police community conflicts that you've seen that are abhorrent, the violence that happens against gays. Any symptomatology of violence in our society has antecedents which really require that we think about using education and giving people a chance to learn that a violent response is not appropriate, that there are ways of expressing your differences in a nonviolent way. And so the idea of a Department of Peace is to create a domestic component where we use education and peace education at every level of society, and at an international level, there would be people who would advise the president how to avoid conflict, how to watch where there's conflict percolating when it's nonviolent, and how to address it, and how to help resolve conflicts without war. You know, I've led the effort in Congress several times to try to stop the U.S. from becoming involved in wars. And each time I could tell you that it wasn't necessary for us to do that. But there's a psychology to war where people kind of claim are trying to claim their own power and project it onto other people. And it really needs to be looked at and analyzed. And I think that, you know, it was, I think it was Emerson who said, Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote that every jet of chaos which threatens to exterminate us is convertible by intellect into a wholesome force. And I believe that's true, that we actually have within us intellectual capabilities that have transformative power, that we can really change the world. And I would not have a career in public life if I didn't believe that. And you don't have to be in public service, although I recommend people into it. But it's important to believe that we have this capacity to change things, that we're not stuck, that the world as we see it is not going to hell in a handbasket. It was the poet Tennyson who once wrote, "Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world." What you think about that? Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Thank you. Thank you. So from the general to the specific, I'd be glad to entertain any questions that you may have in the time we have remaining. Mr. Headmaster, how much time do we have here?
10 minutes.
Okay, that's 10 minutes. We could get 10 questions in.
Questions about the campaign are open.
Yeah, you can ask any question you want. You know? Yes.
So apart from just sort of envisioning yourself in the role, for anyone interested in public service, what would you recommend?
If you're interested in public service, I'd recommend participating at a local level. That's where I started. I started as a city councilman and in a neighborhood where I went to high school. But I went to community meetings. I would stand up and speak out. I mean, it's important for your opinion to be heard. There are many ways to do it now with the social media, but you start locally. So you go to meetings, you know, read what's happening locally, and if you have a strong feeling about something, say something about it. That's really important. And then you find that there are other people who may think like you. But I really encourage local involvement first, because when you learn how things are done locally, you kind of can extrapolate as to how things can be addressed in a larger setting, state or nationally. Yes, anybody up in the balcony there have a question? Yes, shout it out, okay, because...
What was it sophomore year that made you decide you wanted to be part of Congress?
Okay, what was it?
What made you decide you wanted to be part of Congress in your sophomore year?
Our lives, what made me decide to want to pursue the thought of being a congressman, even when I was a sophomore in high school, was that I have this belief that our lives don't belong just to ourselves only. I mean, they do belong to ourselves first and foremost. We have to take responsibility for that. But in a larger sense, we're all one. Our lives belong to the society as well, and we have to make a contribution. We should find a way to be of help to the society in whatever we're doing. And public service is only one way to be of service. There are many different ways to do it. But I felt that it was part of serving. And if you want to be a leader, you have to first be a servant. And so that was what propelled me, that I had this thought of serving. Next question, yes.
The Democrats and Republicans are currently splintered in the House and the Senate. What do you think the next step is for both parties?
What do you mean? Elaborate.
There's clearly a divide between Democrats and Republicans and a clear fight between the two.
Yeah, the split between Democrats and Republicans, I can speak to that because I've tried to be a bridge going back and forth with the debates that happen between the parties. I want to step back from that question for a second and ask you to think about this. A partisan government, Democrats, Republicans, essentially breeds dichotomous thinking, us versus them, whoever they are. Dichotomous thinking is a precursor to war. Because you can only, if you're a Republican, you can only look at the world this way. If you're a Democrat, you can only look at the world this way. And the problem is that we're not having communication within the great expanse that exists between the parties. We're not really talking about the way the world can be without having to hold fast to labels, because labels do not describe who we are. Labels are often misleading. So we have to depolarize our approach in Washington. We have to change the rhetoric. The rhetoric that happens right now in Washington and in this political campaign is very toxic. Now, there's a friend of mine who's an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, and on his refrigerator he has a bumper sticker that says, Lashon Hora, don't even think about it. And Lashon Hora is derogatory speech. And the thinking about that is this, that our thoughts are the precursors of our words and our deeds. So when we start thinking negatively about somebody else and we project that, we are creating another reality with respect to that person, but we're also demeaning ourselves. Now, that's not easy to do, because the Congress of the United States is sometimes the Olympics of Lashon Hora, or derogatory speech. So that helps to further the partisan divide. So the rhetoric has to change. And the thinking has to change, too. It has to be about more what unites us as Americans and what unites us as citizens of the world. I know there are dozens of countries represented in this student body. because we have to be citizens of the world. We can love our country, and should, but in a larger sense, we're not simply Americans. We're part of a global community which has global challenges that need to be acted upon globally. Thank you for that question. I think we have time for how many more questions?
No, you got one up there.
Yes, I just want to kind of keep a balance here. Go ahead.
What was the most surprising thing that you encountered when you were running for presidential candidacy?
The most surprising thing that I encountered when I ran for president. Well, I was in the campaign, I ran in 2000, I began my campaign first in 2002, and I went all the way to the convention in Boston in 2004. And the thing that surprised me the most was how united America really is underneath all this political battle. That there's an underlying unity in this country, and that's what I tried to call forth and try to build from. And to go from one part of America to the other and see how much people are alike, how they have the same kind of concerns, where they want a decent life for themselves and their families, a good education for their children, a decent health care, a job, good wages. I mean, these are things that are in common with people across the country. So having seen that, it's a blessing for me to having had the opportunity to see that. Mr. McMullen, who did you? Okay, go ahead.
Of all the presidential candidates, who do you think would be the best president, and who do you think would be the worst president?
Next question. Yes. Okay. The question, what would you say to someone who is interested in becoming a lobbyist? First of all, tell the truth. Because we have lobbyists in Washington right now who are telling people without having any scientific proof that GMOs are good for them, that toxic waste is good for them, that war is good for them. No, just tell the truth. That is the first requirement of a lobbyist. It's important for Congress to get information and government to get information from individuals who really know what they're talking about and to help guide them in making decisions. But the most important thing is tell the truth. Next question, anybody? How are we? Okay, yes.
Like you said,
Hold on, let me just...
a lot of politicians that don't tell the truth. Do you think that, like, what actions is there any punishment or anything like patrolling, like lies in government?
What's the punishment for lying? Well, sometimes it's getting elected. And what I would urge you to, I mean, look, there's more fact checkers now than there are anywhere, and the internet sometimes gives you a chance to line up what a candidate says against what the truth is. And it's important that we demand truth be told. We're told from the scriptures that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Well, truth does liberate us. We may not like the truth, but we have to try to seek it. The poet Keats said that beauty is truth and truth is beauty. And that's all you need to know. Well, we need to have this idea of being truth seekers. Now, it doesn't mean that any one of us are the sole repositories of that truth. But when somebody's running for office, we have a right to expect they're going to level with us. And they not exaggerate and just tell us the way it is. And people are looking for that. They're hungering for that. But, there's no, as far as trying to punish politicians who told a lie, I don't know, if we sent them to prison, we'd be even more overcrowded than we are. So, yes.
What are your thoughts on campaign finance reform?
Campaign finance reform. I'll tell you, I mean, I don't know how I made it through Congress, except that the internet helped me raise funds. Because if I had to tin cup it by going to interest groups, I'd be out of luck. Because my politics generally challenge some of the most powerful interest groups. We really need a public financing. This Citizens United case where they equated money with free speech, well, the problem is that the only way you get to be heard then is if you have a lot of money. And if you don't have a lot of money, you have free speech, but not much of it. So we need a constitutional amendment or a reversal of Citizens United in the Supreme Court. It's possible. In the meantime, the internet's a great way to support candidates. I strongly endorse it until we have some broader campaign finance change. It's a problem because, you know, going back to the young man who asked about lobbyists, the problem is that our politics, our decisions go to the highest bidder often. I'm sorry, that's the way it works. And, you know, I don't like that. You know, our politics are corrupted by money. And money in it is not inherently evil by any means. You know, even though I grew up as a Catholic, you know, following the Canterbury Tales, where the prioress is wearing a medallion that says, "Radix malorum est cupiditas." Money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. It's a neutral factor, but money can be used in the furtherance of the misuse of power, and that happens. And so what we have to do is try to find a way to have a campaign finance system, which should be public, I think. I mean, we really need public financing, because the politicians are dealing with trillions of dollars. And public financing would cost such an infinitesimally small amount of money as compared to the amount of money that's being moved into society through government. So I favor public financing. I favor the Supreme Court reversal of Citizens United. And then, you know, until we find that moment or a constitutional amendment, we need to individually help candidates. I think we have time for one more question. Is that right? Okay, final question, buzzer shot. Okay, yes, please. Louder, okay?
What do you think defines a good leader?
Define.
What do you think defines a good leader?
Define.
What do you think defines a good leader?
Okay, question is, what defines a good leader? Courage, number one. Courage opens all doors. If you look at the word of courage, the root is a French word, coeur, the heart. It's really the expressive power of the human heart, which is a transformative force in everything that it comes into contact with. So first is courage, the willingness to stand up and speak out. And then, you know, they're not in any order, but honesty's important. To tell the truth, whether people agree with you or not. And the third thing is not worrying about whether people agree with you or not. It's important to speak your truth. Emerson, again, in his essay on self-reliance, you know, written more than a century and a half ago, but worth reading this day. His essay, Emerson's essay on self-reliance. I read it every year. It started when I was a freshman in high school. He says, "Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string to believe that what's true for you could be true for everyone." So there is some inner guidance that each of us has that is a part of a universal wisdom that connects us all. And to actually take the opportunity to stand up and express it at times, what you feel. He talked about how he would be in a room and hear someone else saying exactly what he was thinking, and how his own words would come back to him, what he described as an alienated majesty. Well, we need to trust ourselves. So those are the kind of things that I think help in leadership, you know, not being afraid, standing up and speaking out, trusting oneself, being honest. I am so grateful to have a chance to just share some time with you in this assembly at Taft. And once again, Zach, thanks for making this possible. Thank you. Thank you. And you can reach me at Kucinich.com, Kucinich.com. It took me years to learn how to spell it, but it works on the web.
I just want to let you know.